Welcome to the Four Visions Market Podcast, a space built on the principles of integrity and reciprocity. Together, we will engage in thought-provoking conversations about plant medicines, why these plants are coming out of the rainforests, jungles, and mountains after thousands of years, and what it means to be in right relationship with the ancestral wisdom cultures and guardians of these traditions. I'm your host, Mariah, founder and director of Four Visions Market. This podcast is the natural evolution in our commitment to providing you, our tribe, with incredible resources to support you on your healing journey through plant medicines. Welcome home.
Welcome back, Four Visions family. We have a very special episode today for you. Thank you for tuning in. I want to give a very warm welcome to our guest today, Elizabeth Bast. Elizabeth is a co-founder of SoulCentro Iboga Retreats in Costa Rica, along with her husband, Mbeye. Together, they traveled to Gabon numerous times to study the traditional Bwiti ways of knowing, including the Missoko Bwiti initiation, rite of passage, and immersive traditional Iboga provider training. She is a twice certified trauma-informed yoga teacher and has completed the transformational coach certification for psychedelic medicine integration and addiction recovery through Being True to You. She is also the author of the award-winning memoir, Heart Medicine, A True Love Story, One Couple's Quest for the Sacred Iboga Medicine and the Cure for Addiction. I'm gonna actually let her introduce herself to us and pronounce her sacred Bwiti name and perhaps share with us a little bit more about what that means and say hello.
Thank you so much, Mariah. Yes, my Bwiti name is Mbeye, which means the river or the medicine of the river. And I'm very grateful that the river is my greatest teacher. Thank you. It's such a joy to be here. Thank you for having me here. What a pleasure. What a privilege to even speak about this medicine or this way.
Thank you for coming, for blessing us with your presence, and for being open and willing to share about the work that you're doing and about your story and your journey in service to sacred medicine and the tradition in honor and reverence to Iboga. And I'm just feeling so grateful for the opportunity to connect over this sacred medicine, to learn more about it, and to highlight this incredible healing therapy for our community and our listeners here. And so with that, let us begin by hearing a little bit about your journey and how you found your path. Introduce us a little bit to what that path is, and you can go as far back as you feel called from your childhood upbringing, and really just whatever feels right and present for you in this moment.
Thank you so much, Mariah. Yes, it begins, I would say, for me, at 14 years old in my first sweat lodge, where my mother was taking me to a traditional Native ceremony with different teachers in an intertribal community. And I started with all night long dance, singing and dancing under the moon, and the sweat lodge, and dawn bath ceremony, which is in the water, praying to the directions. With Coast Salish teachers, a Shoshone teacher, different teachers would come in and share. And this is also part of my ancestral line, also, some of it. So that beginning in ceremony, I feel really helped prepare the way for me to be guided and to be able to listen. And I am so grateful for it, I sense a lot of people would benefit from starting in ceremony without medicine before going to medicine and having that experience of the inner medicine. And so from there, I began a relationship with plant medicine as a young adult, learned a lot, also how not to do it for me. And I was very grateful for a sacred relationship with medicines over about a decade, including sacred mushroom and ayahuasca and wachuma and peyote. Very, very few and far between. Very sacred experiences, very integrated experiences. And that I absolutely attribute to my ability that I had to hear the call of Iboga. And what brought us to Iboga was tragedy. And it was not on my radar. I was not looking for it. My husband, my now husband, who was my partner of 6 years at that point in our life, he experienced a severe drug relapse, primarily opioids. And I was so shocked when he confessed to me, and the first thoughts in my mind were, well, this is over. And then immediately there was another message that came from a much deeper place in the voice that I now know so clearly as Iboga. And it said, pray, wait, listen. And it was so mysterious, and cryptic, but I know that was an important message. So I did. I slept on it. I went into a space of not knowing so that I could know. It's important to not try to figure everything out with the mind right away all the time, but to allow for a space of mystery. So the next day I was in nature and walking, which is my church. And I still remember listening to the owl that was there in Northern California and the trees that I was looking at. I can still see them. And then there was this message, not an auditory voice, but like a message that said Iboga. And in that moment, I can remember if it was really, if it was helpful for us, or how it was helpful for us, or it was so vague, or how I even knew about it. I couldn't remember how I knew about it. In retrospect, I think I had read about it in a book like a decade prior and thought, I'll never do that. That sounds so intense, and kind of filed it away. And then twice more it came, Iboga. And again, Iboga. And I took note. I thought there's something going on here. And it was one of the most profound moments of message in my life. And I felt guided. So immediately I ran home and looked up on the internet and found, wow, this is something that could help us. Because the stats for the standard treatment models are abysmal. If someone's dealing with an opioid relapse, the stats are not in their favor. They maybe have a 10% chance in most cases. And sometimes that involves a lot of other drugs that are just as toxic. So I started to look up Iboga, and then I also started to see, wow, this is medically sensitive, and it can go wrong if people don't know what they're doing. And so I began this quest of research, and I told my partner about it at Chore at the time, and he was both drawn and cautious, and there was a battle going on in him for sure. It's like a possession. It's like a possession to be around someone who is very physically dependent on a drug. So as I started to research the medicine, I started to learn that it could be helpful for trauma. And I've been through my own trauma. I've been through childhood sexual assault. I've been through some very intense experiences dealing with a parent with PTSD. So it called to me, like, well, despite my 20 plus years of yoga and other medicines, there was still these enduring shackles of what I call the flinch that never ends, which is CPTSD. So I went for my own reasons to this experience. And it was a very difficult time between the time we learned about Iboga and the time we actually got our bodies to where we were going. There was relapse. There was a lot of hard circumstances. You know, never knowing if someone's telling you the truth, right? It's very difficult. My only promise to myself, because I was really at my last thread in our relationship, my only promise was, I'm going to get there. I'm going to do my best to support him to get there. And I don't know anything else. So there was some relapse for sure, up and down and all over the place. And he did come clean. And this is what we learned, how beneficial it is for people to come to this medicine, not for acute detox, but to come with preliminary detox, to get the full benefit of what this medicine is here to give. Not to say, there's definitely a place for ibogaine. And I feel there's great benefit to deepening into the healing, the soul healing with Iboga. So coming to Iboga, which is a far more powerful experience than ibogaine, is a total alkaloid Iboga medicine. He arrived clean. He had gone through withdrawals, and I very intuitively guided him through a preliminary detox, putting him in the infrared sauna, starting to give him a wachuma a couple of weeks out just to start to move some energy. So he came clean, but he was not at all healed. Getting clean is not healed. That thing was still in him. And the addiction being like a possession, something is having a joyride. And that the doorway that it enters through is the wound of trauma, right? So he was still very possessed. I wasn't talking to him. I was talking to something else half the time, and he was right on the edge, not deciding, do I really, I want to live or do I want to go down in flames? And so he made that choice. And that's really important, to want to live. And so we went, and in 24 hours, and he can share his story too, but in 24 hours, that thing was gone. I looked into his eyes and I could see him again. And he was sparkling and shining through. I could see his soul. And yeah, that entity, which is what I know that it was gone. It was taken out of him. And then after the first journey, he came out and he said to me, I love my life. I never want to disrespect myself again. And that is just the root of so much healing, that authentic self-love. And it was beautiful to see him looking at nature differently, everything. He was there. And in our second journey, I met his ancestors. And it was like being at the Super Bowl. He is an African-American man, or as he would say, an African in America man. And they were so beautiful. They were welcoming him home, and he felt them too. And that's what they said, welcome home, son. And it's like they'd been holding a prayer for 400 years that never gave up. And it turns out, and we didn't realize at the time, but his patrilineal DNA actually goes right back to Iboga territory. So he was carried home. And while the medicine is for everyone who comes in a good way, it's a special homecoming for certain people who have ancestors there. It's like, yeah, your grandmother's house is really lovely for everybody, but it's special for you, And it was this profound healing he's really suffered a lot with systemic racism and oppression and microaggressions and all kinds of things. And it has been profoundly healing for him to come home in that way. And from there, we went to Africa 3 times over the course of several years, and studied very deeply and apprenticed ourselves for multiple years. at least 5 or 6 years in apprenticeship, and then partnering with other providers who had more experience and learning along the way. And we've been serving full time on our own the last 2. So we've been connected to the medicine for 10 years. And he's been back to Africa 3 more times, where he's going for his 7th journey this year. And he was ordained first as a Nganga, which is a healer of the tradition. He did not look for that. He did not ask for that. It was something that the elders see. That's very important to have mentors, whatever you're doing in your life. Have mentors who can see you from outside of yourself. And he was bringing people for healing. Also, he's coming to study and serve and bring people for healing. And I believe that was a big part of it. And then further down the line, he was also ordained as a Nima. That's a higher level that allows him to initiate other men into the Bwiti. And that's a very big responsibility. He is now on a council called the Nganga Council, which is an NGO organization of Bwiti lineage holders. These are lineage holders that have that are known within that community, within Bwiti. And they're also interacting, for example, with the Kentucky Opioid Commission, talking about issues around indigenous IP, right? And the indigenous ancestral legacy that we call intellectual property, which is, it's much more than that. And his teacher, Binana Kanganga, is also on that council. And it's a big responsibility. Part of his job is to protect the integrity of the traditions in the West. And he's very protective in that way. So I've watched him through this whole journey, and that 300% dedication. And to anyone out there, who's struggling with addiction, people who struggle with addiction are very special people. These are very feeling people, often very creative people. And it's a power. So whatever is the power of the addiction is power that's waiting to be repurposed. And I saw that with him. He's like a 300-mile-an-hour bullet train going in whatever direction he's pointed it. And now it's pointed at the altar. So that's good. So that's a little bit about how we came to the medicine. Oh, and I will say this. In that second journey, we had a vision of our life where we're sitting right now. We saw ourselves in Costa Rica. We saw ourselves serving medicine. I wasn't looking for that either. That wasn't on my radar. But we saw the vision of this, and we saw a baby. And that baby didn't come for 6 years. I kind of thought, man, maybe it's metaphorical. No, he was taking his sweet time. And we sat up at a ceremony, and this little honeybee came. Honeybees love sweet things, right? And pure things. And the honeybee went to him and then to me, really slowly, and then him and then to me. And it went back and forth so slowly, like 6 times. And in that moment, I just knew down to the deepest fiber of my being that is the spirit of a child who was coming to check us out now that we were clean and sweet enough for this sweet spirit. And it's been beautiful to see the whole unfolding that happens one step at a time, one breath at a time, and not in a rushed way.
Taking a quick break from today's conversation to share with you a short message, let's talk about plant medicine integration. Integration work is the action taking and the grounding into the fibers of our beings, the ancestral and cosmic wisdom that the plants give us. It is the manifestation of every vision. When we do it well, it becomes the true ceremony, the ceremony of life. The 4 Visions Plant Medicine Integration Program was created to support you in learning how to cultivate the unique process of translating the healing and wisdom received from the plants into your daily life. Our personalized, self-paced learning platform was developed to suit each person's unique availability and commitment levels, with as much hands-on guidance and support or autonomy as you are needing and wanting. Our in-depth curriculum is comprised of a robust digital content series, live monthly workshops, private spiritual consultations, and community connection. Our faculty is made up of renowned spiritual teachers, indigenous wisdom keepers, and integration specialists, each with unique backgrounds and decades working with the plants. We created the curriculum we wish we had had years ago when beginning our plant medicine journeys. Some of the topics we cover throughout the program are immediate integration basics, cultivating your spiritual practice, building a plant allies toolkit, how to make spiritual payments, how to deepen your connection with plants, working with Mbeye, Sananga, and cacao as allies, the foundations of microdosing, the art of forgiveness and reconciliation, spiritual hygiene, and plant diets. If you feel called to cultivate your integration practice or are interested in nourishing your spiritual studies and deepening your relationship with plants through a one-of-a-kind transformational container, we welcome you to visit fourvisionsintegration.com to learn more and sign up. And now back to today's show.
So beautiful. Thank you for that wonderful introduction and getting to hear a little bit more about your journey with your beloved, and what an inspiring story. Really, truly, to really tune into, like you said, this potency within someone and be able to transform that potency from the hold that he was under through his addiction, and be able to empower himself, heal himself, and empower himself to find his healing medicine and his authentic medicine once again. These are the stories that really inspire me and inspire us on the path. It's why we do the work that we do, and what a special path that you have found yourself on, and really, one of deep listening and continuously being open to receiving the guidance that life has carried you on, and the path that you've been carried on. It's definitely, I can imagine, something that you would have never imagined 20, 15 years ago that your life would look like it does today, in service to this sacred plant and tradition. Speaks to just the divine perfection of the spiritual path. And when we really, walk from this place of humble listening, the magic and the effort, the continuously evolving gifts that come to us when we really just put down the ego and come to life from this place of deep humility and surrendering and inner listening.
Thank you for presencing the listening. This is, in the West, in the industrialized world, such a space that is dominated by the intellect, led by the intellect. It is the most valued form of knowing, way of knowing. And the deep listening is where it's at. Listening to spirit, listening to nature, listening to the soul. All the answers are there. All the creative inspirations there.
Yes, and like you said, while it's always so important to have mentors and people who can orient us on the spiritual path, this process of deep inner listening is a key element to our empowerment, to be able to tap into that direct connection to the source of creation. So it really is a beautiful part of our waking up and claiming our inherent right and place within all of creation. So ultimately, this journey that you've been on has been so magical and full of surprises. And, you spoke a lot about Chor's journey and the role that you played in supporting him. And I'm curious, how your relationship with the Iboga evolved in your own studies, as well as, I think I might have read something about how in the Bwiti tradition, the women's tradition, there's a separate tradition or a unique tradition and lineage for women. And so I'm really curious to hear how your process has been, as well as, because you weren't coming from this place of needing to heal addiction within yourself, what your healing journey has been like through the Iboga, as well as the process of, for sure it was a reclaiming and a coming home for his roots, but it wasn't necessarily the case for you in that way. So how your process was, coming into different tradition and that union and finding home in the heart through a lineage that, doesn't run through your blood, but obviously vibrated and resonated with your soul and your unique design and calling in this world.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, there is a women's tradition called the Mabundi, and it is walking right alongside the Bwiti. It is only for the women. They have their own temples, their own rites and initiations. I have been through the rite of passage. It's called the Mbeye. And this is a test. This is a test of the mind, the body, and the spirit. And that's something we're really lacking in the West, is rites of passage. And I'm so grateful for that experience, especially as a Westerner. This experience helped me to expand my thresholds of tolerance and patience and endurance, strength, and it made me very acutely aware of each and every one of my privileges. And I'm talking about not just the human world of all of my privileges, which are for helping to make more privilege, but the privilege of having two hands, the privilege of having a glass of water, the privilege of standing up when I want. And it is very much not a trauma-informed experience. It's a survival-informed experience to do that particular thing. We're trauma-informed here, but that, is very survival-informed. And I'm very grateful for that. And to orientate ourselves, I learned to orientate toward life itself as rite of passage and not comfort zone. And I'm so grateful for that. And seeing how strong the women are there. They are so strong. They know their strength. And a lot of the strength comes from the relationships with the collective, with these separate spaces for women only, is so empowering and sacred and magical. I feel like it's pretty much the answer to healing the world. And I speak just for the women on this, the women gathering together. And it's good for all genders too, to have their own spaces. And for me, I'll say this. Iboga taught me how to heal my own PTSD. And it really woke me up to the true purpose and power of the mind as a privilege, to have this creative tool. And I, even despite all of the yoga, and I've had therapy and meditation and spiritual studies and all of these other ways, my mind was still running amok a lot. And I didn't think it mattered. I didn't realize how bad it was and what it was doing. And Iboga just throws the floodlights on in the basement of the psyche and goes through everything. Do you really want to keep this, or you want to give it to Goodwill, or you want to burn it? And it has to go through every little box in the basement, because you can't just, when you clean out your basement, you can't give away everything. You might have heirlooms in there, So it threw the floodlights on, and I realized, wow, I was really addicted to resentments. I was really addicted to habitual or obsessive loops that were not 100% true and were not serving me. And it really helped me to understand why it's important to not let my mind run amok like that. I didn't think it mattered because I'm not saying things out loud, or still going to yoga must be pretty good, No. And now it's so amazing through this deep long arc relationship with Iboga, how much it has changed my relationship with my mind to utilize it as a divine creative tool and antenna to connect with the cosmos and all that is, and to not take a single thought for granted, because truly every thought is sacred. Every thought can birth worlds. Thoughts are behind every single thing we see that's beautiful or horrible in the human world. Human being thoughts are what's destroying the planet, the human being mind. So I'm so grateful for that. And with trauma, you know, when we experience trauma, there is a tendency toward disassociation. This is a very intelligent survival mechanism that I'm not shaming by any means. It comes at a time for a purpose when we don't have the tools, when we don't have the support or the safe space that we need to be fully present. And so what happens with trauma is people will escape, and then they habitually escape. And then they start to numb. And even with the phone, a lot of people are suffering from partial disassociation by always looking at the phone instead of being here. That's one of the most insidious ways people will lose their connection to the moment. And what Iboga does is it carves deeper than any other medicine to remove these shards of glass from our soul, which is not easy. And it means fully feeling all the things that were put on the shelf in the basement, you know, because they're still there. We just need to feel them. The only way out is through the fire. So Iboga, that's why it has a bit of a reputation for being challenging. It excavates, scrapes the bottom. And it's really interesting. You know, our biggest referral source is Mother Ayahuasca. That's our biggest referral source. And sometimes other medicines, people will come in and they get here and they say, wow, I thought I was done with that. I thought I had worked through that. And no, there's something to scrape a little deeper that's still whispering behind the curtain, that's still holding them back from the semi-conscious mind. And so it excavates, and it allows us to feel fully. It allows us to grieve fully. It teaches me about the sacred art of grief, which is so important because the happiness and authentic joy we can experience is just completely related to the depths of the sorrow and grief that we can feel consciously. You know, they're so woven. So it really helped me to actually move toward my trauma, to move toward my fear, to be present, and to give it to the earth in the right way, at the right time, without turning away, to look into my worst fear, to be present with my body as it's trembling with something, and to actually listen. There's a message there, or there's an emotion there to feel. There's something there to look at, to stop running, to stop distracting, to stop numbing. And Iboga gives each and every person who asks the tools that they need to be present, which is very hard to do for some people who have been through trauma, just to be in their body, to be present. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Iboga is so intelligent, and I have such a rich, authentic happiness that includes the sacred messengers of grief and holy rage, and to be conscious with all of these emotions and states. They are all sacred, to not bypass anything. And so it's helped me a lot, and I'm very grateful.
So beautifully said. Thank you so much for all of that. Really just resonating very deeply. And, you know, it's so true that we, the human psyche, especially the Western human psyche, we are addicted. We're all addicted. And addiction isn't always in the sense of addicted to substance, but we're addicted to separation, or we're addicted to avoidance, or we're addicted to comfort, right? And so from this perspective, you know, a medicine that really helps us to strip away all the layers that, prevent us from seeing clearly, and be able to come to terms with all of the crutches or the elements that within our own being that, like you said, were there to help us. They were there to help us feel safe. They were there as coping mechanisms. All of those elements have a space and a place, and to be able to reconcile with that and find the truth once again, and to find our inherent wholeness once again through this process. It's such an important part of a healing journey and an evolution, a spiritual evolution and maturation, a spiritual maturation. And I really just I'm feeling so resonating with all of this that you're sharing about the design of the iboga, because I've spent over a decade studying and working within the culture of Yahe, which is the Colombian ayahuasca, and it's a little different from some of the other forms of ayahuasca. And one of the principal pillars of the cultures of Yahe is this concept of dieting the thought, and really taking ownership for our thoughts and vigilance over the thoughts, and recognition and acceptance and acknowledgement that we are always in a state of creation, and that we are in co-creation with life in every moment, every breath. And just because we're not saying something or doing something, if we're thinking it, we're feeding the spirit, we're feeding the heart with that energy, right? And so being able to have this radical responsibility over our thoughts and the vibrations that we are emitting, not just outwardly, but towards ourselves. And it's like, what food are we feeding ourselves? What are we nourishing ourselves with? This is such an important element. And, I think that there's a commonality within the architecture and the Yahe therapy and the design of the iboga from what you're sharing in that sense, because, and I think that sometimes gets missed in work with plant medicine. And, we think that we are healed, and we think that, we've liberated and cleansed that, whatever that wound, that trauma, that impact is, and that we're free, and that we never have to deal with it again. And what you're sharing about people coming to the iboga and seeing these things again, and being surprised that they're still there, is, I think, really, really important to highlight, because it's easy to say, oh, well, those other medicines didn't work for me, or oh, I must not have been doing the work that I thought I was doing, because it's still there. But ultimately, the shackles of our conditioning, they're so deep. And so, uncovering the layers and the discipline and the commitment to continuously, seeing those parts of ourselves. And every time we see them, we're different, right? And that's always important to remember. We have more skills, more tools, more awareness. And over time, those thought patterns, those beliefs, they go transforming, but they have brought us to where we are. And so until we go to the depths of the origin of where those thoughts originate from, and come into a deep meeting within, the innermost parts of our beings, and reconcile. And I'm interested to learn a little bit more about, the tradition of iboga with grief, with reconciliation, with forgiveness, because that element often gets overlooked, and we think that we've just freed it and let it go, and that everything's good. But there's still these deep rooted roots that are still there, that will regrow if we don't tend to our garden with vigilance. And this can be done, through a profound awareness practice, meditation practice, and spiritual radical responsibility. But also, it can be done through this communion with the iboga, and how you're describing it, which is really beautiful. So yeah, I just really am happy that these themes are coming through our conversation today, because I feel like they're really potent and important to talk about, and often get swept under the rug in spiritual community or spiritual conversations. And how many times have we been in a situation where someone's like talking about their trauma as though it's like in the past, but they're talking about it still. So there's obviously still a relationship there with that person and that story that was created. And so being able to go even deeper into it and have a space and a container where we can very courageously meet those parts of ourselves, and be so deeply honest with ourselves, and be, really catalyzed to that place of radical self-honesty and truth, to me feels like an incredible opportunity and profound blessing, that is being offered and given, through these sacred medicines and through this tradition.
Thank you so much for these reflections. There's some really important points I would love to respond to. You said a very important word, practice. Our practices that we take with us after the ceremony. The end of the ceremony is just the beginning. You don't get a new life coming out of Iboga or any other medicine. You get seeds. What good are seeds if you put them in a drawer and forget about them? I had to practice 100 times a day at first to get out of my thought addictions. And a lot of people that have thought addictions, especially to self-criticism, which is very harmful to the soul. So practicing, but the neurogenesis is a gift for the neuroplasticity to be able to change, but we must change. That is really key. And neuroplasticity can work for bad habits too. Some people are very addicted to their story. So if they come out of Iboga and they don't want to let go of the story and all of the maladaptive coping mechanisms that come with it, or, what I call professional victimhood, it's different, and not to put down what it is to be victimized. That's really serious. But people can be very addicted to the story. So this practice is really important. And the letting go, right? Iboga taught me that letting go, like I thought it was like, oh, it's a destination. It's a someday. Someday I'll let go, and then I'll be done with that, and I'll let go. Letting go is a state of being. Letting go is every breath, every exhale. Let all that shit go, and then you do it again, again. Letting go is a current that we step into. So I had to do a lot of practice and forgiveness too. I think some people think these are intellectual experiences. Forgiveness and letting go are not intellectual experiences. They are full body somatic experiences. And Iboga is a very somatic teacher. So there's a lot there, and healing our ancestors too. A lot of these patterns come through our ancestors. So practice. Yeah. And I will say this, it's not that the other medicines didn't work. It's that the other medicines were doing very important work to prepare for the deepening. They were cracking the shell. They were etching away at layers. They were beginning a process. And all the medicines are collaborative. All the medicines are constantly gossiping about us, for sure, through the Earth's internet system of mycelial networks and the whole ecosystem. And they coordinate, and they get to places on the front line. Some are on the front line right now, closer to the Americas, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and like what you're saying, even the Iboga, if someone comes out of it and they're not ready to, claim their empowerment and let go of their story of victimhood, that victim story is going to find its way back to them and to their psyche. And so ultimately, with all medicines, I feel like they show us our potential. They show us the capacity that lies within our heart. But then we have to go out and we have to meet that person. We have to prepare the altar of our soul and our heart to be ready to meet that new person. So it's a pathway, and it's it shows us like a map. And I'm sure that the experience with Iboga has some, commonalities with that. And because I don't know Iboga, never met that spirit, I can't speak from that experience. But I do understand that there's always work that has to be done outside of our work with the plants, and the willingness and the dedication and our commitment level and readiness to be willing to do that work really sets the tone for, success in that journey, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And most, I'll say this, most people, when they come to Iboga, especially when they come to this container, which is highly intentional and very thorough screening, when they come to Iboga, they're really ready to do some serious work. They're really ready to look at themselves. And I just am in love with the people who come to this medicine. It's so courageous and humble, to come to this medicine. And there's 1%, we say, thereabouts, that is just not quite ready to let go of the old story. And there's no shame in that either, that maybe the medicine has cracked a shell and begun a process for them on some level that's just not on our calendar. It's not on our timeline for that person's soul. So I'm always in trust with how the medicine is working for people.
I'm so happy you said that, because one of the most common things people come to me and ask me about is this feeling of not doing the work fast enough, or feeling like they're not getting to where they want to go. And I'm so happy that you brought that in, because it's so true. We're all in this place of divine timing, and being able to step into that place of total trust, right? And allowing, and also each person that comes to your container to work with my community, it's like this element of really just acknowledging that each person has their own relationship with the medicine that they're taking, and their own spiritual commitment and spiritual contract with their soul, with their spiritual evolution, with their growth and maturation. And each person is, there to do them, and to, really fulfill what they are needing to fulfill in their own timeline. And I think that is so important on the spiritual journey, the spiritual path, to not fall into those traps of comparison or self-criticism and self-judgment, because they are traps. And if we get caught there, then we will spiral there, for decades. And so ultimately, this place of really finding peace and sweetness and complete acceptance in our journeys and our learning processes is fundamental.
Thank you. Basi, as we say, is truth. Sacred word up. Yes. And what you're speaking about, I would love to presence that a lot of what you're speaking about, the self-criticism, the perfectionism, the urgency, the impatience, these are all fundamental infrastructure of the colonized world. This is what we now call white supremacy, which I call the spirit of oppression. These things don't exist in a lot of indigenous cultures, at all. Like, these types of patterns and patterning. So there's a decolonizing process that can come not only with the medicine, because people can try to colonize the medicine. It's always a disaster, but they try. It is the indigenous framework that holds the medicine. Just as important as the medicine is the way we come to the medicine in our devotional ritual. The way we come to the medicine in indigenous frameworks is the very answer to the healing that we seek. And here we have the psychedelic renaissance that's taking the medicine out of its context, putting it into individualistic therapy sessions that is like very narcissistic, actually. It's just my healing. No, our healing is connected to the healing of all, always, and it must be. That is the way forward. That is when healing really happens. But it starts within, yes. And then to really have true healing in full circle, it becomes about the whole ecosystem. And so presencing that inviting people to look at the ways that they are colonized and bringing colonialized patterning to the medicine, where we can breathe in the spirit of trust. We can invite in compassion and self-love and patience and presence. And there's nowhere to get to anyways. It's just a remembrance of who we really are.
Yes, yes, yes. So much truth and importance there. And I think that, it's a natural kind of segue into this other part of the conversation that we wanted to have today. Because a lot of what we talk about on this show is what it means to be in right relationship with traditional cultures. And we really love to highlight conversations that center around important teachings and understandings and awarenesses that we find to be central to sustaining this path with integrity. And we're living in such a unique, beautiful, insane time when we talk about these sacred ancestral medicines. And so much is happening in the context of the cultural sharing and interexchanging of traditions throughout the world. Some of it is very beautiful, I believe, very important for the healing of humanity and the collective consciousness to have access to these sacred ancestral tools and methodologies to come home and remember. And then some of these aspects, I'm happy that you mentioned this element of the clinic or the psychedelic assisted therapy, because I think that it's very much different from, the conversation that we are having today. And it's a much different perspective. And, what you're sharing about the colonialization of the mind, as well as, the medicines. But even, this concept that we can take a sacred medicine that has thousands and thousands of years of use and tradition and disregard its ancestral way of working with it, and then place it inside a physician's room with fluorescent lighting and give someone who has a Western medical license authorization to serve and hold space completely out of context from the ways in which these sacred tools have been utilized for thousands and thousands of years. That in itself is what you're mentioning, this element of colonization and taking, and even thinking that is even a possibility, is very much coming from this place. And so I would love to open the conversation here at this time. We love to service people from all different types of paths, and our community is full of people who work with plant medicines in a variety of different ways. And that being said, we always love to really highlight and amplify traditional ways, because we believe that the ancestral traditions hold the sacred keys and design to sustaining ethical and integrous work with these plants, and that we can never disregard tradition. And of course, we're evolving. The landscape of plant medicine and entheogens is evolving and growing and expanding. But we always need to remember our foundation. And so I would love to just, start the conversation, see where we go with this, hear your thoughts and perspective. Of course, I'm sure it's very much rooted in your practice and experience with the Iboga, but so much of what we've talked about even thus far is so applicable and really universal when it comes to working with the plant teachers as a whole and in general. And yeah, let's just begin and see where we go.
Taking a short break from today's episode to share about an incredible product line that we absolutely love. It's called Clarea, which means clarity and illumination. Clarea was created from divine inspiration and guidance that our coherence of body, mind, and soul are born from inner clarity. These creations are alchemized with the intention to bring forth health and well-being to the totality of your temple, to nourish a vital, thriving life. holistically handcrafted with love and care for your well-being of mind, body, and soul. An offering that is life-giving, relevant, and aligned for all life and the future generations to come. Kloreya is formulated from over 33 years of the founders' combined in-depth, dedicated study, research, application, and experience with holistic health, Ayurveda, herbalism, permaculture, detoxification methodology, and healing. Everything is 100% organic or wild-crafted, biodynamic, homegrown, vegan, botanical, pure, all ingredients of the purest, highest grade, sourced ethically and sustainably. Kloreya is a full-circle sustainable project that aims to create as big as an impact for our Mother Earth and all life as possible. We are 100% aligned on every level with this beautiful company's mission, and for that reason, we felt called to share this incredible product line with you, our Four Visions family. 10% of all proceeds go directly to nonprofit organizations aimed at environmental regeneration and restorative efforts, specifically for water cleanup, protection and preservation of the waters, restoration of bee populations, protection of indigenous sacred lands, rights, and natural resources, reforestation, and endangered species and animal rights. Check out the link in the show notes and make sure to use the code FVFamily to snag some savings on your order. And now back to today's episode.
I love this topic so much. I have so much reverence for my Bwiti teachers and the lineage that has been held, the relationship with Iboga that has been held in devotional intimacy for countless generations. And who taught the Bwiti is the Babongo. The colonial term is pygmies. These are the deep forest-dwelling people in Central West Africa. They are the second oldest genetic line in the world. They are the original holders of Iboga. We have, as human beings, been working with fire for 1.7 million years and probably having ceremony that long. And ceremony, I know, started as a form of protection. It scares away big predators when we all get together and dance together and light the fire. And so it's possible human beings have been working with Iboga for well over 1 million years. That's a lot to inherit. That tapping into that. And while, I like to stay away from the language of that's right or that's wrong or black and white thinking, although our indigenous teachers may have their own perspectives around when they see the medicine taken or the tradition taken in the West. I will say that it is incredibly sad to me to see people holding medicines without being in relationship with indigenous teachers, without bothering to learn. And nothing against psychedelic therapy. That's great. How about, it's just so interesting, the hubris of completely bypassing this way of knowing. And there's so much hubris in Western psychology has been around over 100 years. Okay. How about the other way of knowing that's been around? And I've had the great privilege in Africa of coming to glimpse and scratch the surface. I will say scratch the surface of these ways of knowing. Oh, they have their own x-rays, let me tell you. They have their own laboratories, their own diagnostic systems. I am blown away by the experiences that I've had that are nothing short of legit Harry Potter grade magic. That these ways of knowing, it is incredibly sad to see people bypass that. And whether or not they're holding an indigenous tradition to be in reciprocity with the ancestral traditions that are the only reason we know about how to engage with these medicines. Mm-hmm. And then there is the reciprocity, which really should be the profit of the future if we're going to survive as a species. Mm-hmm. We need to get away from profit. These, psychedelic therapy companies, that that want to be sold for $1 million and just get their investment money back. That's a bad combo. To focus so much on profit that it is a higher priority than the people or the medicine spirit, or listening to the teacher, not just extracting from it or trying to control it or standardize it. We're going to see where all this goes. It could be a big problem. So being in reciprocity, and I see, this epidemic, I'll say, of what I call insta shamans, which itself is an appropriated word, where people with very little integration or none, they have a profound experience, they have an awakening, and suddenly the next week they are serving other people. Or even, for example, the next year. Iboga is a very powerful medicine, and it is complex. It's actually very simple, but we are complex as human beings. And you need, dozens and dozens of ceremonies at a minimum of serving and watching and apprenticing with more experienced providers and seeing a lot of different case studies and a lot of personal integration work. Personal practice. You have done the homework yourself of your first experiences. And I see these people with very little integration, very little training, and no mentorship, no supervision, no peer accountability, moving into this space. And I'm hearing a lot about sexual abuse. I'm hearing about financial abuse. I'm hearing about other kinds of abuse there, because there's no even knowing of ethics. Ethics are very important to us here, and they're important to the Bwiti traditionally. There are ethics, and it's sad to see people abusing ethics, and there can be, traditional people that abuse ethics too. That's the thing. It's the human being is the common denominator. So to be in right relationship is to be in a respectful way, to understand ethics, to be in reciprocity. And we spent many years, it was 4 years of consistent, deep, immersive work with the medicine until I hit a point where my mind was out of the way and I could serve, and it's an ongoing practice. So I could serve for somebody else. So I could do proper Bwiti counsel for somebody else, and to feel and receive messages like a bell from the medicine. That takes time. It's very painful, and painful for my husband, who is very sensitive, and he'll speak for himself, very sensitive to the spirit of colonization, to see people come and have one Bwiti initiation. They are not certified as a Nganga, and also not all Ngangas are certified to hold their own ceremony. A Nganga is a healer and a seer. So to be at the right level, to receive the permissions and the blessings, and there's so much spiritual protection in that, where you have a mentor. And these older Bwiti teachers of ours, they look into you on the deepest level and see, okay, you are ready. There's so much spiritual protection in that, and so much love in that relationship. To be seen, to be humble, to be held, to be accountable. So to have the right permissions, and also there can be modern lineages, someone growing a mushroom in their backyard, that's okay. But mentorship, right? Mentorship is very important. Community is very important. And so to see people exaggerating their experience, and by the way, having an experience, once in 10 years isn't 10 years of experience. See people exaggerating their experience. We've seen this ourselves. To be in a rush. We've encountered, and we're getting more and more discerning with who we teach. Encountered people who, very heartbreaking, come and they have more initiations than even indigenous Bwiti people will have in a year. And want to be in a rush to be a shaman, and why are they being held back? 1 year is a baby in the Bwiti. 1 year is not a lot. a decade, you're at the beginning, of consistent, personally integrated medicine work. So it's very heartbreaking to see people exaggerating experience, exaggerating their title and permissions, representing Bwiti on any level, whether it's having pictures of Bwiti masks on their site, playing Bwiti music, talking about Bwiti is a privilege. And especially, I'm so sensitive as a white presenting person in the West. For me, and I see that sometimes people are invited in for a purpose, to hold the lineage, to transmit, to teach, to hold healing spaces. For me, I wouldn't have been looking for this unless I was invited in, unless, and I walk by my husband in his ancestral tradition. I'm not trying to take something from myself. I'm here in service. I'm here. We are in deep reciprocity with our community in Africa, deep ongoing relationship, collaborative projects together. That feels right to me, and to walk carefully and not presume to represent Bwiti. We don't speak about Bwiti without permissions. Our elders know about every ceremony that we hold. And we've been working like a nonprofit for 2 years. We're a business structure because it gives us more legal protections here. But everything goes back. Everything in our life goes back, and then some. And that is joy. So just wanted to share that and share, slow down to the West. There's a beauty in slowing down. There's a beauty in listening to the medicine for the next step forward that is just as valuable as the destination. Every step, and to be humble. And there's no need to go so fast, and also glory. And I've seen, for example, an article out there on Medium about how to microdose Iboga, and it's by some white presenting person. They don't say anything about sustainability, the issues which Iboga is facing from the demand from the West. They don't say anything about reciprocity, and they're like, yeah, it's really great. You should try it. No mention of safety, which is a huge topic too, that we can get into. And that's just heartbreaking to me, the unconscious entitlement from the blinders of privilege. We have to be very sensitive if we really want the true blessings of the medicine.
Yes, thank you so much. Really just receiving all of that, and grateful to be talking about this, because I do feel like it's really important to talk about. And again, it's not from a place of shaming, because I have had enough earnest people come to us and want to study and say that they've had this vision of becoming a healer and a shaman. And I just want to say that potential, that is something very beautiful, because ultimately this is what we're needing as a collective. This is what humanity is needing: more people who are devoted to healing themselves and their families, their communities, and the planet. And this passion is something that I always really try to nurture and really support within people who are feeling that initial excitement. And so within that, really, the way that you're speaking about the Bwiti tradition, there's so many commonalities between the culture that I have had the honor of working with and many other indigenous communities and traditions. This element of the path is long, and the path is not about rushing. The path is not about urgency. It's about enjoying the journey, every single step, every single ceremony, every single opportunity to sit at the foot of an elder or your teacher and mentor and listen and reflect and learn and grow. Every time that we fall or falter, being able to savor those moments and recognize we're learning, we're growing, we're getting better. The opportunity to really take ownership over our healing journeys and recognize that we have to heal ourselves and really give a tremendous amount of spaciousness to our own healing processes, and get to know the depths of our own psyches, because that is the map that's going to show you how to be in service to other people. And so, the first 5-10 years of studying within the Yahe, we're drinking to heal ourselves. We're drinking to study, to understand our tendencies, our ways of thinking, our beliefs, uncover these deep layers of conditionings and wounds, and be able to bring that cosmic celestial information from the cosmos to our daily lives. And as we go integrating those practices and healing our relationships and being in harmony and right relationship with all beings that we come into reality with and interact with, this is like the most beautiful reflection that we're doing it, that we're accomplishing what we came here to do. And so this element of really just resting into the path. And, if you're 1 year in or one ceremony in, whatever it is, and you're feeling a strong calling to make this your path, bravo, beautiful. You have another 60, 70, 80 years ahead of you. So there's no rush. And to really just, bask in that, because, I remember being a little girl and just wanting to be a big girl and then wanting to be a teenager and wanting to be an adult, right? And it's like, bam, my childhood's gone. And I lost all of that sweetness of just getting to enjoy being 6 and 7 and 8, right? And it's the same thing with the spiritual path. It's like every step, every step on the ladder that we're climbing is precious and full with so many jewels. And I mean, now that I'm, 11 years into my spiritual journey, being able to reference points in my journey to, offer a moment of counsel or to share a word with someone to help offer guidance and support and inspiration, this gives me so much joy and so much, confirmation, because when I first started, I'll just say it, like I was that person, very much so. And I had many teachers tell me to slow the F down and just like chill, take a chill pill, there's no rush. And so it took many years to really just receive that teaching. And I fought it, and I even tried many times to be that person that I wanted to be so bad, but I wasn't yet. And every time that I tried to act from that place, it didn't feel fully authentic because it wasn't fully embodied yet. Now, when I'm here and, as you said, like the more that we walk this path, the more we realize how much we have left to learn and how much more there truly is. But from, the little path that I have to call upon now, when I'm able to speak or act or share from a place of true embodiment, of true knowing deep within, of having truly integrated that wisdom, those teachings, within and studied them and worked with them, it feels so different. And it feels powerful. Like you were talking about the spiritual protection of our teachers and our elders, but also the spiritual fortitude of having the teachings and the time on the path that go growing our roots and fortifying our roots and growing our foundation, right? And to learn the teaching, the lesson, to only speak from personal experience and to only talk from a place of inner knowing takes a lot of time and takes a lot of studies. And what a gift to learn that, right? And so, I, as a white person who is walking this journey of cultural sharing with different traditions, and learning and getting the privilege of learning what it means to be in relationship with different cultures, and always, listening and humbly attuning to how I can show up in a good way. It's really something that I just really encourage everyone who's listening to really, reflect on how that process is going for them, and what their relationship is with everything that we're talking about, because it's not from a place of judgment, and it's not from this place of shaming and we really just are coming from this place of really wanting to support a vision for working with these sacred traditions and these plants that is going to be sustainable. And, you have children, I have children. A lot of what I do is oriented by the thinking process of earth that I want to leave for my children, and the legacy, and working with the plants in a way that is going to provide an open path for the next generations to come, right? And so really treading carefully with a lot of intention regarding, how we're working with these plants and medicines and how we're relating to these traditions, knowing that we are, as a generation, painting a very unique picture, and this picture is going to, you know, paint the future and really leave the path for the future. And so really, like, everything that you were sharing is just and is so important, down to like the sustainability of the medicines and really preserving these sacred plants, because ultimately, you know, what is the world of plant medicine and the world of traditional spiritual practices and ceremony going to look like in 100 years? And what are we going to do here during our lifetime to ensure that we don't fall in the trap of the hubris of the Western psyche, and that instead this be something very beautiful, this be something that mutually beneficial for all cultures and traditions, that strengthens traditional cultures and also provides a pathway forward for all of humanity.
Oh, Basi. I'm so with you. This was the bulk of several first initial years of training with the medicine, is working on yourself, work on yourself, study your mind, study your emotions, study your triggers, study. And that was present for me first. Like, well, okay, well, when am I going to learn the things? And it's like, work on yourself, work on yourself some more. And I see how valuable that is, because, you know, we need to become the medicine before we give the medicine to other people. And like you said, only speaking about what you know, not what you heard from somebody else. You can never transmit the essence of that thing, especially in the field of medicine, unless you have truly known personally what you're talking about. And that's what we tell to our students who are learning through us. In the fire talks, where we share the oral tradition, only talk about what you know, not what you've heard. And that's really key. And that takes time. And I really appreciate that. My greatest goal, you know, it's so interesting it's very popular in the West to talk about your goals. My greatest goal is to be a good ancestor. And everything that we do is not just looking to what we want to enjoy in this life, but 20 generations forward or more, what is going to be here, and to steward the resources that we have, to be servants of the land, to leave a strong tradition behind. You know, our little one is 3 years old. He loves the medicine already. You know, this is the most bitter medicine. I call it the most bitter and the most sweet. And he comes and he says, "Medicine, por favor." And he comes and receives the medicine. I pour a little bit in his hand, and then he tries to tip the spoon to get more. And he says, "Mucho, mas." And he loves the Bwiti, and he's learning to blow the horn. Our husband's teaching him elements of ceremony already. And to be able to pass something along that will outlive us is the greatest joy, because also we know how infinite and great the spirit world is, and we're going to have a good place there, you know, and speak to our descendants from that place. It's like, that's the ultimate goal. No rush. So there's no rush. Also, people are in a rush to profit, you know?
Yes.
And that's a piece of it. And that's, whoa, be careful.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure. And that's one of the biggest traps, right? Profit and power, and driven by the ego in the Western psyche. And people who are sustaining a plant path, like how you're explaining your relationship in reciprocity with your elders and with the Bwiti people. This is the example of how the medicine provides for us when we are in complete full service to the medicine and to this path of healing that certain people are called to be called to. And ultimately, you know, we have to be really careful with who we're receiving medicine from, and who we're supporting in this journey of working with plant medicines, because there's unfortunately more of the profiting than of the true integrous service happening. And this is something that like you mentioned, it's not exclusive to the Western societies. There are people within traditional cultures who are not in right relationship with the spirit of the plants. But because, this medicine is now coming into the global society, and because, we live in this capitalist world and the Western psyche is driven by these elements, we have to be very, very vigilant and careful, and to really, review any person that you're going to work with, really review and evaluate, and tune into your heart, because your heart will really guide you if you feel that, if that person is in integrity, if you feel safe, if you feel like those the studies that they've done are true and authentic, and just talking to your facilitator will give you so much insight into their background and the way in which they're coming to the medicine, and really always being aware of if this person is constantly offering ceremonies and retreats and go, or if there's also an element of them sustaining their spiritual studies, they're doing their cleanings, their own work to maintain their frequency and vibration and relationship with the plant that needs to be done outside of a space of facilitation. There's so many elements that go into, really evaluating the person that you're going to receive medicine from. And I know we were going to go into a little bit, these elements of safety too, and want to be honoring of the time, but I feel like it's an important element to touch on, just to bring everything full circle here.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for bringing all this up. The medicine, and it's disappointing when we see medicine people behaving in ways that are unethical, that are harmful or exploitative. The medicine is so not a magic pill. That's why these medicines are medicines of liberation. We must choose our intention. They only amplify our intention, and there's an intelligence to that. That is also a sacred teaching, to have all the shadows you're not willing to address get amplified until it's big enough for everyone to see, until there's a disaster. And that's why I know how powerful this medicine is. And every single day, help me to be in the highest frequency, help me to be in the highest truth, help me to be in service to you and listening deeply to you and becoming more and more reverent. And I've seen it. We had to walk away from our first teacher in the Bwiti when we saw abuse of women, financial abuse, some really unethical things that he always said, oh, those people are just jealous, those just haters, until we saw it. And then I also interviewed a woman that he abused terribly. We had to walk away. And the medicine shared, he failed a test that every great healer, great teacher will have a moment where they can choose to abuse the truth. You can see the truth, then abuse the truth. You can abuse your influence. And the karma from that is so massive. I always just want to be on my knees with the medicine. And there's a potential to exploit. And this is what my friend Audrey also addresses, who's a wonderful person. She's mixed from France, but her mother's indigenous Bwiti. She runs a nonprofit called Bwiti Roots. And she talks about the pain in her heart when she sees the exploitation of the tradition, where, and this is tokenism, where someone will come in and they want to be a shaman. So they find a black face. They find someone who will sign off. And we need to really look deeper. There's a lot of, harmful, opportunistic scenarios that happen in medicine tourism. We need to understand the lineage. And when you speak to someone, like you said, speak to the provider. What is the somatic information? Listen, to your body and the self-care. Like we could do 3 retreats a month instead of 2. No thanks. We need to replenish. And I see providers get into deep traps of harmful behavior and even their own relapses into addictions and things if they don't honor their own work and safety. And I'll put the cherry on top here. Safety is always important with every medicine, especially in the West, where people are on all kinds of medications and have all different kinds of drug histories and health issues that at least, they'll never see in Gabon, or they might never see in the depths of the Amazon.
Yeah.
There are different conditions that the medical knowledge and screening is very important as world bridgers here. If you are providing medicine to understand the highest standard of care. And like when people come to SoulCentro, they go through a very comprehensive medical screening. I feel, and our doctor feels, who has overseen over 2,000 treatments over 15 years with Iboga, who has an intimate, integrated relationship with the medicine, he sees they should have at least a 12-lead EKG, at least a full blood work panel with very specific markers on that we show on our website, on our safety page. If a provider is not asking for that, beware with this medicine and not doing a full intake. Like, you need to be asking what medications you're on, what's your drug history, what's going on. A lot of people want to come to Iboga to get off kratom. Kratom is a QT prolonger, and someone could have a fatal cardiac event if it's getting too close. I'm hearing about these underground providers getting people off of kratom, and they're like lucky to be alive at the end. So comprehensive medical screening. We do a deep medical questionnaire. We ask twice, actually, the intake and then the medical questionnaire after registration. And then when people are on site, we do a 6-lead EKG and check all the vitals before each ceremony. We do pulse checks in ceremony to make sure people are in a safe range. We're very careful watching electrolytes, tracking our dosing down, very, very, very carefully and closely. So we keep a really good eye on people, and we have very high safety standards. And there's a lot of people holding Iboga in particular that I hear about all the time that I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to kill somebody at a point, and the medicine is very safe in the with the right conditions. The medicine is a blessing for healthy people. And even there can be healthy looking people who have a little electrical variation in their heart that it's just not conducive for this medicine. So please look deeply into the safety protocols. How many questions do they ask you about? Are they giving you preparation guidelines? What kind of integration do they offer? What kind of integration support? And sourcing. I hear all the time people getting scammed online trying to buy Iboga, which is facing sustainability issues. And by the way, if they're lucky enough to get Iboga, they could be buying it from an elephant poacher because elephants eat Iboga. There's studies that show this crossover. Elephants eat Iboga, so they walk along, grab it unsustainably out of the ground, and that energy is going into the medicine without a doubt. So people need to ask, where is your medicine coming from? And is it mature enough to even be medicine? We are so blessed that all of our medicine comes from sacred relationships, and that's really special. And medicine, people can order medicine that's been adulterated. I know a scientist who has tested online ordered medicine to be adulterated with things even like fentanyl. Really dangerous. So source is about relationships. It's all about relationships. The medicine is only as good as the relationships that hold it from the time it comes out of the ground to the time that it meets us. And I hope everyone is very safe and conscientious as they approach these medicines, to do your due diligence, to pray on it, to dream on it, to listen to yourself very deeply, to look at reviews and testimonials, these kinds of things. But that's not the only thing. All of these things are helpful. And asking about the teacher and the lineage, and do they have, who is their mentor? Who is their supervisor? Asking these kinds of questions. It's important.
Yes, thank you so much. Really, really important information. We could go super into sustainability and what it means to have medicine made in prayer. There's so many things there, but I think that for this conversation today, we've covered a lot of ground. I'm really grateful for this beautiful opportunity, and thank you so much for being willing and open to sharing and having this time together. It's been really, really special, Elizabeth, and Before we close, I would love for you to share a little bit about SoulCentro and a little bit more about the work that you are doing and where people can learn more about you and Chore's offerings, and if they feel called to work with you, how they can go about doing that.
Thank you so much. You can find us at soulcentro.com, just like it's spelled, SoulCentro.com. We are based in Costa Rica. We guide our past guests on annual journeys to Gabon every summer in July to receive initiations with our teachers and to experience that deep cultural immersion. And we're very grateful to be in service. You can find us on Instagram as well, SoulCentro_retreats. And my husband is Gnynagou. You can find us both there pretty much through our IG and on Facebook.
Thank you for the work that you're doing, for your path, just honoring your work and your mission, and sending you a lot of love and prayers, fortifying all of the incredible service that you are providing to so many people. It's been a true pleasure and an honor to connect in this way, and just send you a lot of love and gratitude.
Thank you so much, Mariah. Bless you. Thank you for your sacred.
On behalf of the Four Visions family, we want to thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation and have gained seeds of wisdom that will nourish your spiritual path. If you have a moment, please leave us a review, as this helps us to reach more people. For more resources and information about the plant path, and for the highest quality spiritual tools and botanicals, please visit us at fourvisions.com. We are grateful for your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you all. Until next time.